And now for further analysis, joining us from Cairo as well is International Relations Specialist Dr. Mohamed Osman to discuss the latest developments. Dr. Osman, thank you so much for joining us on Qnews. And first off, what significance does the gathering at Rafah crossing hold in the broader context of Egypt's stance on Palestinian displacement?
Thank you for having me, Salma. This spectacular scene we are seeing at the moment in front of the Egyptian side of the Rafah border crossing rather reflects that the Egyptian stance is unchangeable, immovable. It's an immovable object. It's an unstoppable force, and it was something that will never change, no matter how much pressure is applied to Egypt. In actuality, Egypt, through today's the Egyptian people, through today's humongous demonstrations in Rafah, are saying that the will to reject the will and the decision to reject these designs and sinister plans of displacement are not only the will of the Egyptian leadership or the Egyptian government or President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, it is the will of the Egyptian people and state. And that what the Egyptian government is doing and the Egyptian political leadership is doing is basically reflecting the will and the urges and the core beliefs of the people. Egypt has been historically committed to the Palestinian cause throughout its history. Since 1948 and even before that, Egypt was committed to supporting Palestinian statehood vis-a-vis Zionist Israeli aggression and expansion. Egypt has fought several wars in order to, for the sake of the Palestinian cause, and Egypt also, in peace times, was one of the main proponents of the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. And now Egypt once again stands at center stage as a bulwark of defending the Palestinian rights to continued existence on their land, let alone statehood, and that they would not be subjected to forced displacement and ethnic cleansing, because we have to term things very precisely and accurately so that we know exactly what we are dealing with. We are dealing with a call for an act of ethnic cleansing, which is a war crime, a crime against humanity, and a war crime in accordance with international law. So now the Egyptian people have taken to the streets and went to the Rafah crossing to send this very strong message that the Egyptian leadership is not on its own, that the Egyptian leadership is backed by over 100 million Egyptians who utterly reject the liquidation of the Palestinian cause, not only because of our solidarity and our commitment towards our Palestinian brethren, but also because this is considered a direct threat to Egyptian national security. And President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, during his press conference the other day with President Ruto of Kenya, made it clear that this is unacceptable, and that Egypt will never be a party in applying this form of oppression on the Palestinian people.
Now, shedding more light on Egypt's actions at Rafah strategic location, how do they serve as a barometer of its diplomatic stance on the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Egypt has led all the mediation efforts since the beginning of this conflict, and also has been part of the peace process, as we have said before, and also part of the Palestinian reconciliation process. So Egypt is an integral part of the Palestinian scene, whether the Israelis like it or not, and this is a fact that is there to stay. And now Egypt, with what's going on in the border crossing, Egypt has been focused since the beginning of this conflict on facilitating the entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip in order to save the people of Gaza from starvation and utter suffering. However, when the Israelis invaded the Palestinian side of Rafah and took over the border crossing and basically vandalized it and shot it from the Palestinian side, this substantially decreased the amount of aid that goes into the Palestinian Gaza Strip. And of course, this was part of the genocidal strategy of the Israeli government of Benjamin Netanyahu. So now the focus is back on Rafah, especially with the potential opening of the Rafah border crossing to admit Palestinian wounded Palestinians under the administration of Palestinian officials and not Israeli officials. The Israelis are supposed to withdraw from the Rafah border crossing. So as you can see, Egypt plays an integral part in that, and will continue to play an integral part of that, and will continue to play a major role in preventing any possible displacement of the Palestinian people.
Now, speaking of Egyptian delegations, how does the presence of Egyptian delegations at Rafah shape Cairo's role in the larger diplomatic negotiations surrounding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Well, the groups of people that are present right now on the Rafah crossing represent a variety of Egyptian political parties and civil society organizations and social forces. So they basically represent a multitude of segments in Egyptian society, if not all of them. And the message here is clear, that the entirety of the Egyptian people support the leadership against in their bid to prevent the displacement of the Palestinians. And this will only strengthen Egypt's role as a mediator, as a credible mediator in the peace process, and a facilitator as well, because it builds our credibility. It reflects our utter and stellar commitment to the Palestinian cause and to the foundational principles of the Palestinian cause. And those are the founding of a Palestinian state on the borders of June 4th, 1967, with its capital in East Jerusalem, and also consisting of the West Bank, the entirety of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and also safeguarding the right to return of the Palestinians abroad, not displacing the Palestinians who remain in the occupied territories. So Egypt is committed to that, and the president of Egypt has made it clear that Egypt will never back down from this commitment. This is something that stems from our moral commitment to our Palestinian brothers and sisters, and also stems from our commitment to our own national security. Israeli expansionism in this manner, especially in areas such as Gaza, will threaten and does threaten Egyptian national security, and the Egyptian president did say that very clearly the day before yesterday. So I believe that it will only build Egypt's credibility, and now it is the United States' turn to be a responsible player, to respond to our gestures, to our genuine gestures of attempting to find a peaceful solution to this conflict, and also halting this current genocidal war, or maintaining at least the ceasefire that is preventing further genocide and ethnic annihilation of the people of Palestine. Over 60,000 people have died in Gaza in 15 months, Salma, and this is an understatement. The actual numbers might even be much larger. The Gaza Strip has been turned into an uninhabitable piece of land. They utterly destroyed and wiped Gaza off the map. So now the time is right to focus on maintaining the ceasefire, on finishing the detainee exchange deal, and also rebuilding and reconstructing Gaza, not emptying Gaza from its population. Such irresponsible, dumb statement made by President Trump cannot be accepted and cannot be endorsed. And not only Egypt rejects that, Jordan rejects that, and even some prominent European countries like Germany, like France, they oppose that. And before that, even the Biden administration, when they proposed the idea of displacing the Palestinians at the beginning of the war, the entirety of the Arab world and the Islamic world, as well as Russia and China and most of the European countries.
Yes, but sir, speaking specifically of Trump's statements, how do Egypt's actions at Rafah reflect broader regional power dynamics?
It reflects that Egypt is a prominent regional power that will have a say in what goes on in Palestine, that it's not up to the Americans to decide the fate of the Palestinian people. This is not acceptable to the Egyptian leadership, and the Egyptian leadership has displayed its ability to play and project its own power diplomatically and peacefully of its own weight and political power and weight. So this is basically what Egypt has been doing, and how this will affect regional dynamics. I think it will cement the Egyptian position, and it will garner support from other prominent regional actors in the Arab world, or at least that's what we hope to see. However, whether it does or it doesn't, Egypt at the end of the day has foundational principles had established red lines, and this came in the words of the president himself previously, and those red lines will not be crossed no matter what the circumstances are.
Indeed, sir. Egypt has also been standing at the forefront of humanitarian efforts. And from here, I would like to ask you, in what ways do Egypt affect the humanitarian aid efforts in Gaza, and what role does this play in its regional influence?
70%, 70%, Salman, remember that number, of all the aid that has entered Gaza over the past 15 months was from Egypt. 70% from the Egyptian government, the Egyptian state, and the Egyptian private sector, and Egyptian civil society, and even ordinary Egyptian citizens. This is 70% of the huge amounts of aid, humanitarian aid that went there was actually Egyptian. The remaining 30% was the rest of the world, including some of the richest countries in the world in East and West. So this should tell you the integral and pivotal role Egypt is playing in the humanitarian support of the Palestinian people. And also Egypt has committed to be involved in the reconstruction and the rebuilding of the infrastructure of Gaza, along, of course, with other regional and international prominent actors. However, none of this can actually materialize or happen unless the Trump administration backs down and puts the trajectory of resolving this crisis back into its proper tracks, and that is, as I said before, a ceasefire, a detainee exchange, and the reconstruction, and the beginning of an actual serious peace process to achieve the two-state solution.
Now, sir, looking at the wider picture, in what ways can Egypt's position on Palestinian displacement shape future refugee policies in the Middle East?
It establishes a fact that no one, that Egypt is saying, and also Jordan as well, that no one should accept the idea of displacing the Palestinians into their lands, accepting them as permanent refugees. Because, and this even was pointed out by the president before a few months ago during a function that he held, His Excellency held at the Cairo Stadium in support of Palestine, when he said that the core difference between Palestinian refugees and other refugees who come from countries like Libya or Syria, or even in Ukraine, or any other country in the world, or in the Middle East, they someday will go back to their, and Sudan, they will go back to their countries when the conflict ends. The difference in Palestine is refugees, when they are kicked out of their own countries, they never are allowed back in by the Israeli occupation. We have seen that in 1948. In 1948, 700,000 Palestinians, over 50% of the native Palestinian people of Palestine, were forcefully displaced by the Zionist gangs and militias back then, the Haganah and the Aragon, and they were never allowed back to this day. In 1967, 200,000 Palestinians were kicked out of the West Bank and Gaza. They were never allowed back to Palestine until today. So Egypt will not allow, and the Palestinian people as well, will not allow the repetition of this of this crime against humanity, and this crime against the Palestinian people and their unalienable rights. So I think that this is the precedent that Egypt and Jordan are establishing, and other Arab countries and all the countries in the world should follow suit by refusing to accept any American propositions to relocate Palestinians to other countries, because Trump before that said we can relocate 100,000 Palestinians to Albania, other Palestinians to Indonesia, and these propositions, all the countries that maintain a moral stance and a moral commitment to the Palestinian cause and to human rights in general should reject such propositions, and Egypt is now being a role model and leading the charge in rejecting the idea of the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mohamed Osman, for your insights and for all the information you provided us with.